What's up? What's up? It's your boy Dio and Mo Domuto. We're back with another video. Anyway, we're watching Swagkage. Alright. Ranking every Naruto arc from worst to best. You know what I'm saying? 36-minute video, so we're gonna get into it, alright?
Number 12, Fourth Shinobi World War. Yeah, I know this is like the coldest Naruto take ever, okay? Is anybody surprised that the war arc is in last place? Probably not. It has a lot of
problems as in the whole thing?
Plenty of times throughout my video catalog.
Crazy.
The main two issues are, first, at a certain point, the plot just kind of stops moving forward altogether. As soon as everybody in the allied shinobi forces starts fighting Kabuto's reanimated ninja, interesting plot developments cease altogether. It's just fight after fight after fight. And the second problem is
really
that pretty much all of these fights are boring. What you're left with is a long stretch of dead time. With no plot hooks and a bunch of lame fights, there's nothing here to keep the audience captivated. Now let me speak a bit in the arc's defense, because I don't think it's all bad. The beginning is pretty engaging, especially if it's your first time watching the arc. Even though it wasn't executed well, the setup to this arc is great. A battle between an undead army of the strongest ninja in history and the rest of the world sounds badass. Like, really badass. And speaking at least from my experience, it was hard not to get excited about seeing characters like Zabuza, Haku, Asuma, and various members of the Akatsuki again.
Yeah, that was cool.
The tumultuous alliance between Obito and Kabuto is also pretty interesting too. Plus, there's a lot of intrigue in Sasuke getting the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and Naruto training to eventually master the Nine Tails. The flashback with Minato and all of the insight into the Nine Tails attack that it provides is also some of the best stuff in the series. So the beginning of the arc definitely gets a pass from me. Things only get bad when the actual war starts, but pretty much as soon as Naruto and B step in, things start to pick up a little bit, and by the end, when the arc reaches its climax and the five Kage are fighting Madara, Naruto and B are fighting Obito, and Sasuke and Itachi are fighting Kabuto,
the war arc has a lot of low points,
but it's all really good.
It is.
It also gets bonus points for featuring Madara versus the 4th Division. Like I said in my fight ranking video, this is the best villain introduction in the series, hands down.
Yes,
easily.
Of course.
Number 11, Kazekage Rescue. This arc has a strong start and has a lot going for it in general, honestly. It introduces some new characters. Existing characters, and does
I agree.
As well. Naruto's determination to save Gaara does a lot to make him more layered and likable, and Sakura finally gets to play as one of the main heroes of the story.
Sorry, I'm trying to watch the video too. What makes this arc trash? Gaara, not Rock Lee, fucking Mike Guy's team, like hella trash. And then when Naruto and Kakashi chasing Deidara, that lasted way too long.
Pretty much impossible to see his conversation with Kankuro and his fight with Deidara and not come away with a positive opinion of him. So making him the focus of the arc was a good idea. Rescuing Gaara is a compelling objective for the main characters. This is also the first arc that shows off a village from one of the other 4 or 5 great nations, and it gives a name to the tailed beasts and their Jinchuriki. By extension, it also expands on the goal of the Akatsuki a little bit more. There's definitely a lot of stuff here that's either narratively important, super compelling, or both. It's definitely not a bad arc, but there's a sizable portion of it that I don't like. Pretty much as soon as Team Kakashi and Team Guy start fighting against the Akatsuki, something about the arc just seems off. First of all, Itachi and Kisame do not need to be here. I find it very jarring that they show up, actually. Especially because the main characters don't even fight the real ones. They're just clones. Now, I know that
it was so ass.
These versions of Team Kakashi and Team
Naruto get caught in the Genjutsu, that lasted way too long.
They just die. But, like, just don't have them show up at all. On that note, from this point on, the fights, with one exception, aren't very good. Sakura and Chio's fight against Sasori is awesome, but pretty much everything else is either fine or just straight up bad. As a result, the climax is pretty underwhelming. The final fight against Deidara is like, it's not terrible, but it's definitely not of the same pedigree as all of the other.
It wasn't even a fight. It was a fucking chase.
Kamui is pretty cool, though. Number 10, Final Arc. I had a bit of trouble deciding whether I wanted to put this above or below the Kazekage Rescue arc, but I think this is the spot I'm most comfortable with. The final 10 or so chapters with all the Naruto and Sasuke stuff did a lot to push it over the edge, but I also think that the Kaguya fight, while it's not spectacular or anything, is fine. The arc is a lot more consistent than the last two. There aren't any sections that I find particularly boring, and there aren't any weird shifts in pacing or anything like that either. I know a lot of people really hate Kaguya, and while I think that she's a pretty big step
they could have used this later down
Naruto,
the line, bro.
Really big
to continue regular Naruto
I also think that she's like a fine villain. The Berserk all-powerful force of nature.
This could have been
thing
like a
is
year
something I'm
later
fan of, and this,
in the
coupled
story or
with how
something like that.
visually interesting her abilities are, makes her very fun to watch. The quiet insanity thing she's got going on is pretty eerie too. Throughout most of the fight, she has a pretty calm look on her face, but Kishimoto does a good job conveying that beneath it, she's totally gone. I'll address another elephant in the room with Kakashi Susanoo. A lot of people think that this was like the stupidest thing ever, and it's not extremely stupid, but
It was cool as hell. What y'all talking about?
Really cool. Like, yeah, it's the biggest, stinkiest pile of horse shit in the whole series. It doesn't make any sense at all. But I think that Kishimoto, like, he had to have known that he was just destroying all of his readers' suspension of disbelief to do this. I think that he knew that that was going to happen and that it was worth it. There's enough of an attempt at an explanation here that because of how sick Kakashi using both versions of Kamui and the perfect Susanoo turned out to be, I think I can give it a pass. If it doesn't work for you, sure, I don't think that this alone is enough to move the arc below the Kazekage rescue arc, especially considering, like I said earlier, all the stuff with Naruto and Sasuke at the end is spectacular. Sasuke's heel turn is awesome, the fight is great, especially in the anime, and Naruto finally getting through to him at the end is cathartic beyond belief. I went into this fight hating Sasuke and came out the other side thinking he was one of my favorite characters. Like, even in retrospect, everything that he'd done throughout the whole series just clicked for me. The main issue I have with this arc is Zetsu. He's not likable, and I think that that's on purpose, but I think that it does actually detract from the arc a little bit. That retcon especially sucks. Now, my feelings on it have mellowed out a bit since I first read the chapter where it happened, but I still don't like it very much. Some people have gone so far as to say that it ruins the entire series, and I think that's going way too far, but I definitely don't like it. Number 9, Reunion. Like the last one, this arc doesn't have any bad parts pacing-wise, but it also doesn't have any sticking points for me like Zetsu. I know a lot of people really hate Sai, and like with Kaguya, I'm not here to be the Sai defense force, but I don't think he's that bad. He's not my favorite, and I also personally prefer if Kakashi was here in Yamato's place, but I actually like Yamato quite a bit, and I think all the stuff with Danzo, Yamato, Sai, the Foundation, and all that is really interesting. Sasuke being the focal point also does a lot to make the arc more engaging, since the guy is shrouded in mystery from the end of the Sasuke retrieval arc all the way up until the climax of this one.
My thing is, they could have just picked somebody from another team to help them out instead of like Shai. I feel like, yeah, Shai was just there. That's the main problem with him. They could have picked, y'all see the poster right there. I'm looking at the poster. Choji or something. Shikamaru.
The last arc also leads
it didn't matter who they put
there.
there. The story's still been the same.
Orochimaru Tenchi bridge setup. It always feels like the arc's going somewhere and that it's going somewhere interesting. And typically the payoffs to these setups aren't disappointing either. The confrontation at Tenchi Bridge is awesome. Naruto's fight with Orochimaru is one of the better fights in Naruto. Speaking of, while I thought that Itachi and Kisame didn't really belong in the arc that takes place right before this one, I think that Orochimaru and Kabuto's return feels welcome. Right. It makes sense for them to be here since Sasuke is living with them after all. They're both great villains, just like always, and so I think that it's really saying something that I feel like Sasuke steals the show from them at the end of the arc. Everybody's reunion with Sasuke is some choice stuff. The fight is great, all of the character interactions are great, and the way that the scene is directed is brilliant. The arc is definitely slower than plenty of other Naruto arcs, but I don't think it ever screeches to a halt. The peaks aren't as high as in any of the arcs that I have above this one.
It's a little warm up to the real arcs.
The whole time.
It's a decent warm up.
It's really close between this arc and the next one, out of which one I think is better. It's very hard for me to decide, but I think that this is the order I want to go with. I might change my mind next week, who knows. But for now, I think I'm locking in the Ten Tails arc at number 8. So first off, especially considering the arc we're talking about, let me make one thing clear. Even though we're still pretty low on the list, I think that this arc is great. In fact, I think that the arcs got spectacular as early as 9th place. The reason I felt I should clarify that is because this is basically the 4th Great Ninja War Part 2. And a lot of people feel close to the same way about this arc as they
once everybody start coming, yeah, Part 2, yeah, I get it.
I am not one of those people. I think this arc is a blast from start to finish, and I have more problems with it than I do with the reunion arc, but I also think that the highs here are way higher.
It is.
In fact, many things that people consider some of the series' peaks are spread throughout this arc. You've got Obito versus the Blood Mist, Kakashi versus Obito, Guy versus Madara, just to name a few. Madara and Obito as a pair are phenomenal.
All that together?
One of my
Okay,
favorite
okay.
things about their dynamic is that they're not really even on the same side. They both spend the
He
arc
putting all that
fighting
together. This
against
should be
the
higher
entire
then. What the
world
fuck?
and fighting against each other to become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails at the same time. I also think that every single one of the Hokage is characterized well, and watching any of them fight is tons of fun, especially when they're fighting together, either all at the same time or in specific combinations, like Minato and Tobirama, for example. Watching Naruto adapt to the situation and get massively stronger as he gets more and more in sync with Kurama and eventually stacks Sage Mode on top of his Nine Tails chakra is super fun.
It is.
Like, everything about
It
this
is.
arc is
This
just
shit
fun.
fire.
It is just a fun time. There's a lot of stuff in it that's weird and that some people feel doesn't make sense or only kind of makes sense, but I don't care. None of it's particularly egregious, and like I've been saying,
Why the
this
Grizzlies
part of the
getting
series
fucked?
is just
God
so much
damn,
fun
Lakers?
to read or to watch that it's hard for me to feel
You
like
niggas
the
don't wanna win
positives
for
here
real.
don't outweigh the negatives. Number 7, Immortal Duo. So this is basically like the same type of manga as the reunion arc.
This is a
It
cool
very
art.
consistently good and doesn't
It's a
really
good
have
art.
any
It's a
low
good art.
points
I'll take
or
it back.
sections that drag. But I think that the high points here are quite a bit higher than they are in that arc. First of all, pretty much everyone will tell you that it was a good idea to give Shikamaru a vital role in the
Yeah.
story. The scene where
It
he
was.
buries Hidan is one of the best and most iconic moments in the series. The Rasen Shuriken is cool, and the training Naruto goes through to learn how to do it is engaging. I think that Naruto typically has
It dragged.
really good
Some of the trainer
arcs,
art.
and
That
this
trainer
one
art
is
right
no
there
exception.
dragged a
Both
little
fights
bit.
against Hidan and Kakazu are awesome and very engaging too. Asuma's death is super sad and also raises the potential stakes for the rest of the arc by introducing the possibility that one of the other main characters, like Kakashi or any of the other members of Asuma's team, could end up being killed by
see that.
Hidan
I
or
see that.
Kakazu. Shikamaru's one-on-one standoff against Hidan is really intense and
It is.
super scary.
I'll take that back. It
I don't
is
have a ton
good.
to say about this arc, it's just solid. Number 6, Land of Waves. This is the part of the video where I think I'm going to
I don't know. I think the Ten Tails arc kind of low, ain't
Pretty
it?
much all of the arcs we have left are popular choices for a typical person's favorite arc in Naruto. I see people say any of these 6 arcs is their favorite arc all the time. And I have to rank them all from worst to best. So inevitably, I have to run into a situation like the one I'm in right now, where I say that a good portion of the fan base's favorite arc is actually only the 6th best arc in Naruto. Like, I'm sorry, if I could put it higher, I would, but just logically, I can't. One of the arcs has to be 6th place, and it's this one. Let me say right from the outset
What
of
arc
my
is this?
analysis that I totally get why this would be somebody's favorite arc in the series. It's a really good part of Naruto. If you think the Land of Waves is the peak of the series, that's totally fine. I get it. Same goes for everything I have above it. I just like these next 5 arcs more. But yeah, like I said, I want to stress, this arc is spectacular. Zabuza and Haku are awesome first villains.
Zabuza, shit. I
All
like
the
Land
main
of Waves.
characters are introduced super well. The first chapter with
Except for
Naruto,
name.
Iruka, and Mizuki is spectacular. Team 7's respective character introductions, the bell test, the fight with the Demon Brothers, Team 7's
arc
first
is
fight
good.
with Zabuza, the fight on the bridge, everything from start to
It
finish
is.
in
It's
this arc
good.
is
This
fun.
is what got
The
me
stuff
hyped.
with Inari and his dad is like, I don't want to say it's bad because it's definitely not, but it's like a little much sometimes. It doesn't need to be in the arc as much as it is.
Yeah.
But that's only if I have to name a negative about the Land of Waves, that's the only one I can think of, really. This is just such a good first arc for the series. It excels at introducing all of the characters that it needs to introduce, introduces pretty much every fundamental core aspect of the world that you need to progress with the story, sets the tone for the rest of the series really well, and features some phenomenal fights. I've talked about this many times before, but I think that Kishimoto really shows his skill as a writer in the first fight between Team 7 and Zabuza. Throwing Naruto and Sasuke up against somebody that powerful, it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to have them fight him straight
Right.
up, because obviously they're just going to lose. But he gives Zabuza a very interesting handicap through the water prison jutsu, because while maintaining that jutsu, Zabuza can't move. Has to keep his hand in the water prison. So all Naruto and Sasuke have to do is force him to move. And he's so much stronger than them that that's actually a pretty difficult task. But the two of them are clever enough that they're able to think of a really cool plan, like a genuinely sick plan, where they trick Zabuza into thinking that they're throwing a shuriken that's just a diversion for a second shuriken That's the actual shuriken, but that shuriken is not the actual.
That was good. That was good right
I
there.
think it was the actual.
It showed they like their development.
Functionally a shuriken, it's not a
while
shuriken.
being in the
it's
Team
Naruto,
7, being under
Naruto
Kakashi. I liked it. It was
back
good.
From the shuriken into himself and throws a kunai, which forces Zabuza to remove his hand. Like it's genius. It's so cool. Like, if I didn't know any better and someone showed me the opening chapters of Naruto, my gut reaction would be, well, okay, so they're going on this mission, right? But they have this super strong, like, mega badass Kakashi with them. Like, what are Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura supposed to do? Kakashi is way more competent than them. Anything that could possibly threaten them is something that Kakashi will just be able to sneeze away. And anything that could threaten Kakashi is something they would have no business helping him with. Right? And Kishimoto, he just swiped that problem away. Made it a complete non-issue in the arc. The power disparity between the Jonin and the Genin here also makes the battle on the bridge way more intense. Like, things get really dire, super bleak. Is Tazuna gonna die? Who knows? Is Sasuke gonna die? Who knows? Naruto, he's probably not gonna die. But for pretty much everyone else on the bridge, their fate is totally up in the air. Also, in a lot of series, the humanity given to and eventual redemption, I guess, of Zabuza might feel really corny and cheesy and not necessary. It might detract from the series, actually. But here, it's like, it just works.
It's a little much,
it works really
but it works.
Zabuza, this emotionless sellsword bounty hunter, villain, antagonist, who you're not even supposed to empathize with at all, has an emotionally resonant character arc. Like I said, there are many times throughout this arc that Kishimoto is able to show off how talented he is as a writer. Number 5, Chunin exams.
Put me next to Haiku.
I'm gonna get executed for this, I know, but look, I like the
Chunin
exams.
Number 5.
Number 5 is not low.
I gotta see we got above it.
Why I think it's better than the Land of Waves. So first off, in the Forest of Death portion, I think the
I gotta see what
tension
he
is
got
just
above
as high as, and typically exceeds the tension present in the Land of Waves on the bridge. There are many situations where it seems like one or more main characters is about to die. Also, now, instead of there just being 2 very scary antagonists, there are like a billion. You got Orochimaru, all of Orochimaru's goons, Gaara, and pretty much anybody with an unusual or creepy character design. This is also the arc that introduces Orochimaru, one of the longest lasting and most impactful villains in the whole series. Here he gets the curse mark to Sasuke and sets up one of the most important plot points for the rest of the series, that being Sasuke's defection from the Leaf. And also, we get a really cool moment out of it when Sasuke awakens the curse mark and breaks Saku's arms. The stakes passed to the Forest of Death aren't necessarily life or death. Like, people can still die in the Chunin exams, but it's less about that and more about whether or not the main characters are going to become Chunin. This makes the arc really engaging, especially if you're invested in any of the characters taking part in the tournament, which, if you've made it this deep into the series, you probably are. It also keeps the adrenaline pumping with fight after fight after fight after fight, and I'm going to say something that might be a bit controversial, but is definitely not incorrect. Most of these fights, or at least a lot of these fights, aren't actually that good. At least not compared to other Naruto fights.
Right.
But every single one of them at least makes for a good scene, I think. Aside from, the fight's a little weak, but I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people say it is. Gaara versus Lee kind of speaks for itself. The finals have some great highlights with Sasuke versus Gaara and Shikamaru versus Temari. Orochimaru's fight against Hiruzen during the Konoha Crush section and Naruto's fight against Gaara are both spectacular.
Right.
This arc also introduces an impressive number of new characters, many of whom end up becoming mainstays. Guy and his team, Kurenai and her team, Asuma and his team. I mean, like, technically some of these characters debuted in Chapter 1 in the Academy, I guess, but that doesn't really count, right? I'm pretty sure. So don't be that guy in the comments like, well, technically Shikamaru did not. He was actually in Chapter 1, Swagkage. Like, don't. Please don't. But yeah, all the Sand siblings show up for the first time here, too. Jiraiya makes his first appearance in the Chunin exams. Like I mentioned earlier, Orochimaru and
what's the best fight in part 1 between
and then there are some characters
Rock Lee
and
Gaara
more important
or Naruto vs Sasuke,
like
part 1?
She's really cool, but doesn't really do anything after this arc. Everybody likes the Chunin exams.
Let me know down below.
Like I said with the Land of Waves arc, if this is your favorite arc, I get it. It's just not
so
mine.
part 1, Rock Lee versus Gaara.
This is probably going to be the one that gets me in the most trouble. And before anybody says that I've lost my mind, no, it's not because people are going to think I have this too low. I think a lot of you are going to yell at me for having this too high. Specifically over the Land of Waves and the Chunin exams. But yes, I actually think this arc is that good, and I think that it's also probably the most underrated arc in the whole series.
I ain't gonna lie, having this
first
over.
of all, this arc introduces Itachi.
The Ten Tails
and
arc
Kisame
is
in a
crazy
scene that
too.
I think
I
is
watched the
great.
Ten Tails arc kind of
Just
low.
like Madara, Itachi spent a majority of the series before he was introduced being built up as a major threat. And in his introduction scene,
his arc
he doesn't
good,
disappoint.
but
Not only does he live up to the hype, he surpasses it. I think that one of the reasons Itachi's so beloved is because of how cool he is in this scene. I mean, obviously, the whole plot twist, which I'll get into later in the video, has a lot more to do with it than that. But Itachi simply wouldn't be what he is without a debut scene this cool. Anyway, the arc also introduces the Mangekyo Sharingan and both of Itachi's unique abilities, Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu. And it also has hands down the coolest use of Tsukuyomi in the series. Another thing this arc introduces by introducing Itachi and Kisame is the Akatsuki and the threat they pose to Naruto. We also get the great scene of Sasuke's first fight with Itachi, and then the fight that happens immediately after between Jiraiya, Itachi, and Kisame. Speaking of Jiraiya, this arc also does the majority of the series work developing Naruto and Jiraiya's relationship. After this, the amount of on-screen interactions between them is very limited. It's pretty much entirely thanks to this arc that Jiraiya's death in Shippuden is so effective. This arc also does a lot to establish the existing relationship between Itachi and Sasuke. Next, this is also obviously where the series introduces Tsunade, and I think I like Tsunade more than most people do. So maybe this doesn't mean as much to you as it does to me, but I think that this arc is where she's at her most interesting. She's a really good foil to Naruto here. She's basically his exact opposite. With Naruto, you have this idealistic young boy who really
to the second round,
wants to become Hokage, but isn't even close to being qualified for it. Then with Tsunade, you have this jaded, cynical old lady who's being offered the position of Hokage, but doesn't want anything to do with it. One thing that they have in common that makes watching both of them interact so entertaining is that they're both loudmouths. They are still a little different in this respect, though. Like, Naruto just doesn't have any tact whatsoever when it comes to navigating social situations, whereas Tsunade clearly knows better, but just doesn't give a shit. The character arc that she goes through here, and eventually concludes with her accepting her role as the 5th Hokage, is great. She's got a very compelling dilemma presented to her by Orochimaru, too, one that's easy to empathize with. Plus, she's just funny, and it's really fun to watch her fight. This arc also introduces the Rasengan, Naruto's trademark jutsu, basically Naruto's equivalent of the Kamehameha for the rest of the series. The Rasengan training, just because of how
this arc was definitely so how cold Kabuto is.
My favorite bit of on-screen training in the series. And I've talked about this plenty of times before.
Because Tsunade fucking messed up his whole body, and this nigga just figured it out. If I move my left leg, I can move my right arm. Like, what the fuck?
It's a series highlight.
That nigga was fire.
Definitely one of Naruto's top 5 character moments. As Tsunade points out herself, the way he pulls it off is pretty clever too. Making shadow clones so that they can use their hands to keep the chakra contained in the shape of a ball is like... It shows a very rare level of meta-awareness about the way his own power system works from Kishimoto. I get why Kishimoto decided to nerf Jiraiya and Tsunade. It would have been cooler if we'd gotten to see all 3 of them fight at 100%, but I can't really see a way around this problem, so I can ignore it. Number 3, 5 Kage Summit. Now that I think about it, maybe this is also a hot take. Does anybody else have the 5 Kage Summit this high? I feel like I might have to
5 Kage Summit over the tuning?
But I don't have as much to say about this arc. Like, the number one main reason, I'm just going to be honest, is because I like Sasuke. His fights against the Raikage and Danzo, respectively, are 2 of my favorite fights in the whole series.
I don't really don't like that Danzo fight. I really don't. I don't know about y'all.
Speaking of the 5 Kage, it was very nice to finally meet the rest of them after spending most of the series knowing just 2. This was a really interesting direction to take the story in after Naruto beat Pain, because what I was thinking was going to happen was Naruto was just going to train some more and then move on to fight this
Danzo fight
was
mid as fuck. I
was definitely not expecting one of the main characters to basically declare war on the entire world by starting a fight with the 5 Kage. This is one of the most intense arcs in the series, partly because it doesn't really
and once
follow
you figure
the
out
every structure
that every time one of the Sharingan eyes closed, he was done. I was like,
Danzo, but like
it wasn't no twist to the fight.
He's actually on the side of like the good guys, technically. The real villain here is Obito, and Sasuke is aligned with him. Like, Obito's on the same side as the final boss from the last arc. It's cool, right? Like, for Naruto, this is a formula break. It's not like a revolutionary storytelling technique.
Nah, this is too high, bro. I don't know.
Part to do something like this, obviously. There's plenty of media out there that's done things that are way weirder than this. But for something like Naruto, like I said, this is just cool. The only thing that sucks is the lame, shitty Fu-Ao subplot. Like, when I tell you I don't care about this at all, the words are not strong enough to convey my actual feelings. This is so boring, and it doesn't belong here. And the arc would be better off without it. Now, I did like the Kisame B subplot. That was pretty good, and the fight was pretty good, too. I guess it also could have done without Sakura's fake love confession to Naruto. That
that was ass.
About an already divisive character, but aside from those,
even Naruto saw that
great.
bullshit.
Spectacular fights, really good character moments, especially all the stuff at the end with Kakashi and Sasuke, and then Naruto and Sasuke. Plus the setup to what seemed like it was going to be a promising war arc. All the world building we get by getting introduced to all these people from different villages. The immense progression through Sasuke's character arc. It's all spectacular. A nearly perfect arc with just a couple of blemishes. Oh, also, before I move on, aside from all the meathead shonen action stuff, I think that the diplomacy section, like with all of the 5 Kage and their aides talking with one another about what they're going to do about the Akatsuki, is awesome. There are some great characters.
Yeah, it was cool. This was an interesting
that's impressive
arc, but
because this is the first.
This is way too high.
I guess Kishimoto just does a really good job characterizing them. But now that I think about it, pretty much everyone is characterized either well or perfectly in this arc. This is in contention for Sasuke's finest hour as a character. Many of his best moments are here in this arc. There are a lot to pick from, but one non-fight scene that stands out to me, specifically in the anime, is the one where he appears on the ceiling of the conference room and his theme song starts playing, then Mifune jumps at him and he blocks Mifune's sword with his own sword. Give me some more of that, please. In conclusion, a nearly perfect arc with just a couple of blemishes. Number 2, Prophecy and Vengeance. Most people split this arc into multiple smaller arcs, like not just 2, more than that. Typically
Number 2?
3, sometimes even 4.
What are you talking about?
Personally, I've always felt like this was one complete story arc, which sets up Itachi as Sasuke's mid-series boss and Pain as Naruto's. While the manga splits this up into Itachi Pursuit, Tale of Jiraiya the Gallant, fated battle between brothers, and Pain's Assault, the anime only makes the distinction between 2 arcs, Prophecy and Vengeance and Pain's Assault. I felt like why not just combine them, because I don't really agree with the point at which these arcs separate into 2 different arcs, and they would have ended up right next to each other on the list anyway. Now, I don't really think I need to explain why this is.
I know number 1 is,
I think a lot more people
the
are
Sasuke retrieval arc. Okay, I see the number 1.
Than where I'm placing it. It's really, really good. It's easily the best arc in Shippuden, and it's putting up a fight for first place in the whole series. When I did that fights ranking video, I'm pretty sure that this
so he
arc
combined the Pain and the Sasuke Itachi arc with the Sasuke versus
Sasuke versus Deidara, Jiraiya versus Pain, Naruto versus Pain, Sasuke versus Itachi, and Sasuke and the rest of Taka versus.
You putting all that together, this should be number 1 then.
Plot points in this arc are
I like the retrieval arc, but not as much as this.
On the
he
Sasuke
could
side
combine
of things,
everything.
not only does he stop Orochimaru from stealing his body, but he also finally gets his showdown with Itachi. On the Naruto side of things, all of this stuff pretty much speaks for itself. Everything with Naruto himself, Jiraiya, and Pain is fantastic. Jiraiya's death accomplishes exactly what it's supposed to. It elicits an emotional reaction from the audience and motivates Naruto to be strong enough to beat Pain. Pain himself is a fantastic
yeah, to kill Jiraiya like that,
Naruto.
man.
Pretty much everything he says, in addition to contributing a little world building, fundamentally challenges Naruto's
Naruto pulled up so clean, bruh.
Should function. Pain's also a fan-favorite villain for a reason. Pretty much everything about him is perfect, from his character design to his abilities, which are all clever references to Eastern mythology.
What's your favorite enemy from Naruto? Let me know.
Forms of reincarnation, to his philosophy, to pretty much every piece of dialogue he has.
Probably,
I think Pain is the most otherworldly a Naruto villain has ever felt at the time of their introduction, even more than the literal aliens that come after him. It's not hard to argue that this is where Naruto himself peaked either. The way he processes Jiraiya's death is extremely human and three-dimensional.
Naruto,
like
I ain't gonna lie.
He blows up on Tsunade and she just lets it slide. That's a good character moment for both of them, actually. And the way he tries his absolute hardest to forgive Pain, but just can't find it in himself to do it. Of course, this is all small beans before the big moment, which is his actual entrance before he fights Pain. There are too many things that I like about this arc to list. If I go over all of them, we'll be here all day. Like
I feel like this should be number 1. He had the Naruto Pain fight, the Jiraiya and Pain fight.
These are pretty major things too. Like I said at the start of the section, I don't really think anybody's going to complain that I have this too high. If anything, people are probably going to be upset that I have it at number 2, not at number 1, because I think that the Pain arc is the most popular choice for the best arc in Naruto. And while I totally understand for all the reasons I've already provided, I don't think it's quite as good as number 1. Number 1, Sasuke Retrieval.
Yeah.
So if I were to rank the arcs based solely on the quality of the fights in them, obviously the last arc
this should have been number
this
2, I ain't gonna lie.
This would not be number 1. But, well, first off, this arc does have what I consider to be the best fight in the series, Naruto and Sasuke's first fight in the Final Valley.
It is.
And second, I think all of the other pieces of the arc are generally consistently better than pretty much everything in any of the other arcs. This is a really good payoff to all of the Sasuke stuff set up earlier in Part 1.
I always said I love the first fight over the second fight because I just felt like the build-up felt more. The build-up to the first fight was more, it felt better than the second fight. The second fight, it just felt like it just, make sure they fight. Like they just added that on to it. They just like, all right, they just threw that in. Like the second fight, just felt like they just threw it in. Even though I love the second fight. Like I love the animation of the second fight. First fight just felt more emotional. It felt like this fight needed to happen. The second fight
before this one does something to help establish its foundation. The Chunin exams in Search for Tsunade specifically plant a lot of the seeds that we see start to sprout in this arc, though. It's very easy to see how everything that happens to him before and at the very start of this arc leads Sasuke to his breaking point. Seeing how strong
I thought Neji died, bro. I ain't gonna lie.
From him and feeling its effects firsthand.
When I first saw this shit,
immediately afterwards see the effects of Naruto training with a different member of the Sannin. Then having this followed with his meeting with Itachi, where Itachi basically says Naruto is more interesting, more special, more extraordinary than Sasuke. Then having this almost immediately, at least from Sasuke's perspective, followed by him fighting Naruto and nearly getting killed by the Rasengan. Then having that followed by him getting jumped by a bunch of Orochimaru's goons and them showing off to him that they're all more powerful than him because they all have more developed curse marks than he does. It all makes sense. Like, you can clearly follow his train of thought if you pay attention to what's been happening to Sasuke up until this point. This is also arguably where we see many of the characters involved in this arc at their best. Choji, Kiba, and probably Neji too never get to be as cool again as they are in their fights against their respective members of the Sound Corps. This is also probably the last time Kankuro ever gets to do anything truly cool, and speaking of the Sand Village, the reveal that they're on good terms with the Hidden Leaf Village is a welcome one. The stakes and tension are also arguably higher in this arc than they've ever been in the whole series, not just because of the consequences for failing this mission, but also because everyone taking part in the mission has to fight their own one-on-one deathmatch against one of Orochimaru's henchmen. Granted, Shikamaru, Kiba, and Lee all get saved at the last minute, but I thought for sure that Choji and Neji were done for.
I thought
also,
Neji
the fact
was
that
dead.
Naruto
I ain't gonna
lost
lie.
his fight against Sasuke, maybe this was because when I watched this arc for the first time, I was just a kid, but it genuinely caught me by surprise and elicited a powerful emotional reaction from me. Right? There was a pit, like a hole in my stomach after I saw Sasuke walk away. It also completely changed the direction of the rest of the series. Shippuden is defined by the fact that Naruto lost his fight against Sasuke. I can definitely see arguments for moving some of the arcs I have below this one above it, but to me, this is the definitive Naruto.
No, only one. I think the pain arc is definitely should be up there.
Because I know many of you are going to have vastly different opinions from mine. How would your list look? If you want,
I ain't gonna lie. So yeah, no, this is a good video. Good video. I'm gonna say it like this. I think the Ten Tails arc could have been higher. If he would add on the certain things in that arc, what he was explaining, I was like, Ten Tails arc should be definitely higher. Chunin is just a little bit too low. Chunin just Loki could have been like number 4, 3, whatever. And then just switch out the last two. This is a cool video. That's pretty accurate too. Like the list is pretty accurate. A little few changes, but yeah, I think it was cool. Pain arc is definitely better than the Chunin. To me, the Pain arc and what he added the fucking Sasuke and Itachi fight, Jiraiya and Pain fight, like, nah. But anyway, shout out to Swagkage. If you like my reaction, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.